Hello and welcome. You're watching News9 Live. My name is Pankaj Mishra. This broadcast is going to cover the 9 significant achievements by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi government, which obviously completes 9 years this May of 2023. And we would be touching upon the key aspects of what transformed India. As Prime Minister Narendra Modi completes 9 years in office, here's a look at the transformation India has witnessed in the 9 sectors, overcoming challenges like the pandemic, an expansionist China and hostile Pakistan. India's global profile has evolved drastically. The consistent policy interventions and the evolving strategies to meet new challenges has helped India become a global partner to the US, Europe, South America and Africa alike. Let's take a look at the special piece which has been made and is available on News9 Plus app, which you can also download on your phones, and how it basically sums up these 9 years have been as far as the Modi government is concerned.
India is home to 1/7 of the world population, and more importantly, it's the fastest growing economy. That too, fastest growing major economy of the world. It has several firsts to its credit, and quite a bit of it, rightly, with this particular government under Prime Minister Modi, is claiming that it has happened in the last 9 years.
He has given highest priority for development of infrastructure.
Creating the platforms, the infrastructure, the policies that allow for innovation, risk-taking and growth.
The entire infrastructure of welfareism has been an achievement.
That is why the people voted Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji to power in 2014 for deep decisive change.
So, on the completion of 9 years of this government, we look at the 9 transformational pillars, what the Modi government would like to call the transformational Navaratnas of this particular government. Look, India has always been a story of resilience. We have braved many challenges. But it's interesting to look at last 9 years, how they have shaped up. You know, the financial inclusion, banking the unbanked, and creating a new paradigm through the JAM Trinity, leading up to the UPI, which is world's one major talking story about digital ecosystem, formalizing the economy. And then finally, when the crisis happened, when Russia-Ukraine crisis erupted, it is impacting the world even today. But India is by and large insulated. When we renegotiated with Russia and brought about a new paradigm in the oil economy, much to the benefit of the Indian citizen.
Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi!
One of the things that stands out with the manner in which PM Modi has engaged with world leaders is not just the regular diplomacy, but this personal connect. For example, he took the late Shinzo Abe to Varanasi to do the Ganga Aarti, for example. You had President Obama doing a Man Ki Baat with Prime Minister Modi.
I think by and large Mr. Modi has represented India well, both in international forums, and has managed to keep India's image as an important player on the global scene intact.
India is a country seen by many as an objective friend, and I think it's got the opportunity now to lead the global south in a way that's never been true before. The real challenge today is how you make sense of this shifting geopolitics, and in that, I think the position of India is absolutely critical.
See, what's happening is that, India has really created a mark in the diplomatic arena, in the global affairs. Back home, it's been matched by as much enthusiasm in the last 9 years. What has happened is that there's been massive reforms in GST, what we call indirect tax reforms.
We are in the process of making history with the launch of the goods and services tax.
And Matching with this is the other banking reform, where we cleaned banks of much of their, what we call stressed assets, the NPAs. So these two reforms really have shaped up the larger economic durability of this particular country at a time when the world is really facing a lot of challenges: inflationary, recession, lack of consumption, and also monetary challenges.
Major thing I would say is to put in place a large number of framework structural reforms. So these are the frameworks that allow the economy to sort of function at a higher level of performance on the supply side.
From 2014 to 2022, the journey has been significantly transformational. And if you take a report card and compare 14 with 2022, you'll see that we were importing 82% with zero exports, and now we are importing 100% assembled in India. And we are exporting almost 12 to 14 billion dollars of Apple phones and Samsung phones and other phones out of India. So that has given us a tremendous confidence at a time. The global supply chains post-COVID, this, are changing decisively, are being redrawn. And for the first time in the history of independent India, India finds itself as an alternative, as a significant growing presence in this electronics value chain.
Well, you heard it from the experts, and obviously the in-depth analysis on how these 9 years have transformed India as far as the economics of the country is concerned. And you can catch it, this particular documentary, on News9 Plus app. And this was brought to you by reporter Ghulam Jilani and producer Deepak Bhadana and Himang Negi. Do check out this piece on News9 Plus. Meanwhile, without much ado, Ghulam Jilani, the reporter of this particular piece, joins us, and also Gautam Mukherjee joins us here on the broadcast as a political analyst. Ghulam, let me begin with you first. Obviously, the list is elaborate when it comes to the achievements of Prime Minister Modi and 9 years in service. But as a reporter, when you had to actually sift through the choices, how did you zero down upon the 9 issues that have been elaborated in this particular piece?
Thank you, Pankaj. Yeah, it was a decision that we took 2-3 weeks ago. So Prime Minister Modi completes 9 years in office.
Right.
It's a crucial time in India, not just because we are just 1 year away from Lok Sabha elections, but also given the expectations that he will be elected once again. And in case he is elected for the third term, Prime Minister Modi will be the first Prime Minister after Mr. Nehru to become Prime Minister for the third consecutive term. And the difference here is that Nehru continued for just 2 years and he later died. But for Modi, and he rode on that huge nationalism patriotic wave. But for Modi, he made his way through Gujarat. He was the Chief Minister of Gujarat for more than a decade. And then he became the Prime Minister in 2014. So what we studied as reporters and our colleagues in office and producers, we tried to chalk out a strategy. How will we do this story, and how are we going to zero in on these issues? Then, since 9 years he has completed, so we decided that we'll select 9 issues which have been transformed literally. So we started with diplomacy. We know what's happening with diplomacy. Earlier this month also, Prime Minister Modi was in Australia, he was in other countries. We saw what kind of reception he received. Before that, we, as our experts are saying in the story, we have Prime Minister Modi having built a rapport with the global leaders. He started, diplomacy is something that he has focused a lot. He has already visited 64 countries, 1 year still into his term. So we know his rapport with Obama. We know his rapport, as one of our experts was saying, with which what he did with late former Japanese Prime Minister in Varanasi, and that is something that even his critics will accept, that Prime Minister Modi has achieved a lot on the diplomatic front. Then comes the the welfareism. If you talk about BJP, welfareism is something that it has achieved a lot, and this welfareism has touched each and every corner of the country. if you go to UP, if you go to Madhya Pradesh, if you go to Northeast, everybody is talking about these welfare schemes. Then there is this Make in India. There is this, border security that has been enhanced. We saw what happened with national security. We have an, as you rightly mentioned in the beginning, we have an expansionist China, we have a hostile neighbor in Pakistan, but still, this just a year before, COVID, we had abrogation of Article 370. So all these things, including one of the massive transformation that we saw in digitization, everybody is, on that digital platform right now. And we saw how many UPI transactions are happening. We tried to, we didn't want to, the list is, as you said, the list is long. It is unending. You can go on and count, how about the achievements. But we try to focus on these 9 things and say, what all has transformed in these 9 years. And also talking about political achievements, we know the manifesto of BJP. It was they had promised application of Article 370. They had promised construction of Ram Mandir. All these things have happened. The only thing that has not happened is uniform civil code. But again, we also touched upon some of the, as Pawan Verma is one of the speaker, former JDU MP, said, there are some negatives also. One of the things is that Prime Minister Modi in both the terms came with a majority, with a huge majority, thumping majority. So a lot was expected from him, in terms of reaching out to the masses, in terms of, there's also another aspect. We are talking about welfareism, we talk about welfare schemes, but there has to be an audit of these schemes, that how many beneficiaries have actually benefited from these. So all these things taken together, we try to make it a 10-12 minute documentary on Prime Minister Modi as he completes 9 years, and
Right.
obviously the time when we are just 1 year away from the Lok Sabha elections and also the state elections.
Right, Ghulam, it looks like obviously to filter down to 9 achievements would have been a tough task. And as you mentioned, Gautam, help us understand here. What Ghulam mentions is a very critical point here, that the reach of these initiatives and the work that the government has done has reached to the hinterlands of Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh. How do you think for this particular government, they have been managing it so well, if I may add here, that the developmental works not just remain on paper, but they actually reach the ground zero? How it has been made possible, and what exactly the government does in order to make it known to people as well?
Well, if you look at how India and its governments have worked over the years, it is very gradually. And in the past, there was, for a large part of the 75 years we have now reached, there just wasn't enough money. The growth rate was 2% or less. And when the growth rate improved post 1991, and in fact quadrupled, became 8 or 9% under the UPA 1 and 2, for a large part of the time, the system was very badly antiquated, bureaucratic, leaky, and corrupt. So, it reminds you of Rajiv Gandhi's famous statement that not more than 15 paisa of every rupee reaches the intended recipient. Now, the big thing that Modi has been able to do right from 2014 onwards is, one, to revitalize the bureaucracy so that, they toned up and started performing better, which meant that implementation improved, at least at the paper and pen level. Then a great deal of digitization, which had been started under Rajiv Gandhi, but again, the gradualism was tremendous. Resistance to change was endemic, and it wasn't followed through. Here, what happened was that digitization was followed through because it was seen as a vehicle to deliver the kind of progress that the Modi government wanted, particularly by way of welfare and incentives and subsidies, which they wanted to deliver without leakages. Then a huge revolution came about in bank accounts where millions and millions of people who were otherwise kicked out from a bank on site were given bank accounts overnight because of a great push from the government. And this became the vehicle through which a lot of things started to proceed. You then had Aadhaar, you had the kind of system put in place that enabled 1 billion people to be inoculated during the COVID. You had a massive, massive infrastructure push because the Modi government realized that much of the old order, the private sector, which was favored by the UPA, were going to be reluctant to invest much in the economy till they found out which way the wind was blowing. But in order to prevent a slowdown and to give the fillip to the idea that without the infrastructure, you've got millions of bottlenecks. And with the infrastructure, the other sides of business will all benefit. There was rural development by way of miles and miles, hundreds of miles of rural roads, rural facilities. There was extensive rollout of 4G, and now that is going towards 5G. So communications improved dramatically. You had e-Chopals, which enabled people to reach out and get real-time prices and make sales all over the country and even abroad. So the main thing that happened when you said, how did he reach out? He reached out through technology. And through this technology, he was able to speed it up. And it was backed very heavily by investment in infrastructure, which saw to it that the growth rate did not fall off. And so much so that even when things were brought to a near standstill during the COVID lockdowns, as soon as they ended, things started picking up again. And today we are considered once again the fastest growing economy in the world, major economy in the world, well on our way to becoming number 4, particularly as Germany has now gone into recession with intractable problems that it won't be able to solve in a hurry. Their fuel crisis is such that they're paying 4 times as much as they used to, particularly after the destruction of the Nordic pipeline, the number 2 pipeline, and the Ukraine war and its pressures. So we are beneficiaries of that, as we have been from Russian oil, which was cheaper than the market, and we were able to buy it in very large quantity with a rupee mechanism. So part of it was fortuitous luck, if you like, and a lot of it was to do with implementation and speed. Something that the UPA often says, but we started it, we thought of it. Yes, you might have, but you didn't finish anything. And that has been the big benefit of the Modi government.
Right, Gautam, obviously, and you have actually hit the nail on its head, because when it comes to the post-pandemic era, obviously we have seen stronger economies also tottering and feeling the heat. But India, has shown some sort of spine there, and has been immune so far as recessionary measures are concerned. Ghulam, in your opinion, while researching on this particular topic, what factors did you come across which actually helped, if I may ask here, or were favorable to the current dispensation of Narendra Modi at the helm of the affairs to tide over this crisis which the whole world witnessed post-pandemic?
Yes, Pankaj, you saw, just after 1 year after Article 370 was abrogated, the whole world was hit by this COVID pandemic. We saw the major economies were facing huge crisis. But
Right.
then, India as emerging, as a major economy, as a global leader, it rose to the occasion. There were criticisms in the beginning, but eventually what happened, we were there to help 94 countries with vaccines. That is where it started. So we kind of resisted the impact. There was criticism how we internally handled the COVID-19 situation. But again, globally, if we see providing, vaccine doses, 700 lakh vaccine doses to 94 countries is a big thing. Then we had Russia-Ukraine war. There was a huge pressure from the West, and India did not buckle under pressure. We have to, Prime Minister Modi made his mind that he has to keep the energy interest in mind. The entire West wanted India to boycott Russia, but that didn't happen. We kept our oil interest intact. So overall, we are a, we all these things happen, like Germany is almost under recession, US is facing a debt crisis, but India is continuing to grow, and by the end of this decade, India will be the third largest economy. And despite all the pressures that post Ukraine war or post COVID are happening, there are also some political achievements. Once you are a majority party, you are a party with a majority, you win 2 consecutive elections with thumping majority.
Right.
So you have that mandate that you can take decisions with, broad decisions. You can take decisions boldly without so much of criticism. But there were some negatives, like in case of agriculture, as our guest was rightly saying. This government has been lucky to an extent. There have been favorable monsoons repeatedly. So there was no agriculture crisis as such. So I would say that this government, politically also, they took a decision like Article 370, what Balakot airstrikes, and how we handle China. You saw the border infrastructure being built in the northeast. You saw how we dealt with after the Galwan clash. So these things obviously, give out a message that here is a government which is going to take bold decisions, which is going to send out message to the world that we are the fastest growing economy. We are not going to bow down under pressure. So we are, calling shots.
Right.
Look at China. China started it's as there were things that were happening earlier also. It was most of the things, rather not most of the things, like many things were work in progress. China has been trying to, China is trying to assert itself along the border before 2014 also. But then what we did with the border infrastructure, we are building our villages in China. China will get isolated along the, globally. With Pakistan, how we dealt with Pakistan. Pakistan is almost, on the verge of collapse. There are political issues happening. But again, we did Article 370, we did Balakot strike. So these are messages that India is sending to the world.
Right.
Under Prime Minister Modi, that we are here to stay, and we are an economy, we are a country, we will not compromise with our sovereignty.
Right. And obviously, Gautam, now talking about, the favorable factors and the numbers that obviously are with the NDA as of now, taking big decisions like abrogation of Article 370, or for that matter, implementation of GST, which the Congress would always say Gabbar Singh tax. That's how they have named it. Taking such bold decisions, what, in your opinion, are the 3, if I may ask you to list 3 of the decision-making enablers that the NDA government, the Modi government, has on its side as of now, which actually helps them and bolsters their support to take such decisions? Gautam, you'll have to unmute yourself, sorry.
I think the major thing has been speed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the implementation of things that they start up to finish. Here is the parliament built in 2 years flat. Can you imagine something
that
like
was
that
quick,
happening in a democracy as turbulent as India's, with many PILs filed in the Supreme Court saying, you know, this is wrong, let's not do it, why is it necessary, why spend the money, etc. So this has happened in area after area, tunnels that have been built in the mountains, in very high mountains, in very difficult conditions, in, again, fairly record time. Things don't start and languish for 10 and 15 years. So this is a hallmark of the Modi administration. Infrastructure implementation has been absolutely first class. Second, diplomacy. In diplomacy, the stature of India has been increased substantially. One is because of an extensive reaching out to many, many countries, many of which were, not ever visited by anybody from India at the level of a foreign minister or the prime minister, throughout our 75 years. And the second part, the adjunct to this, is that we're not just being diplomatic. We are now viewed as a country of consequence because we are on our way to being the third largest economy in the world, just behind, well, considerably behind perhaps America and China. But in 10 years' time, when our economy will also be post $10 trillion, it's anybody's guess how much higher than that, the gap won't look so intimidating. So this, if you like, diplomacy juxtaposed with economic success on a continual basis, year on year, is I'd say the second thing. And the third thing is, for the very first time, we talk of Atmanirbhar defense. Now, while we are making cell phones, rather assembling cell phones, trying to attract semiconductors and so on, it hasn't happened yet. But we are already making quite a few defense items. We have a squadron or two of our self-made fighter aircraft, the Tejas. We're going into the Mark II, and then we're going into the AMCA. We're making helicopters, we're making tanks, we're making light tanks, we're making all sorts of sub-assemblies. We are exporting defense gear, and in a decade to come, we will be a exporter to reckon with, and will meet a great deal. I mean, in missiles, we are already amongst the best in the world. If you talk of satellites, again, we have done wonderfully well with ISRO. So this kind of Atmanirbharta, which is not just manufacturing things for export, as in the Chinese model that helped them grow to the second largest economy,
right?
Though they also have a large military establishment, a lot of it is not very good. We have made an actual, well, two of them, in fact, 2 nuclear submarines. We've made an aircraft carrier. This is already done at a level of $3.5 trillion worth of GDP. So imagine this at 10 and 12, and I think we will be a country amongst the top 5. No country can be taken seriously just because it's very good at commerce. It has to have its capability in a military.
Right, so Gautam Mukherjee, they're also listing speed, diplomacy and Atmanirbharta and defense as the key factors that have enabled this current dispensation of Narendra Modi to achieve what it has in the last 9 years. Thank you so much for speaking to us, both Ghulam and Gautam Mukherjee, for joining us this afternoon, and also as this day marks the culmination of the month of May and also the culmination of 9 years. So when it all started in 2014, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi took oath, let me once again bring to you the special presentation on our News9 Plus app, which is actually named Modi's Navratnas, the achievements in 9 years. Enjoy this program as we take your leave. Thanks for watching.
India is home to 1/7 of the world population, and more importantly, it's the fastest growing economy. That too, fastest growing major economy of the world. It has several firsts to its credit, and quite a bit of it, rightly, with this particular government under Prime Minister Modi, is claiming that it has happened in the last 9 years.
He has given highest priority for development of infrastructure.
Creating the platforms, the infrastructure, the policies that allow for innovation, risk-taking and growth.
The entire infrastructure of welfareism has been an achievement.
That is why the people voted Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji to power in 14 for deep decisive change.
So, on the completion of 9 years of this government, we look at the 9 transformational pillars, what the Modi government would like to call the transformational Navratnas of this particular government. Look, India has always been a story of resilience. We have braved many challenges. But it's interesting to look at last 9 years, how they have shaped up. You know, the financial inclusion, banking the unbanked, and creating a new paradigm through the JAM Trinity, leading up to the UPI, which is world's one major talking story about digital ecosystem, formalizing the economy. And then finally, when the crisis happened, when Russia-Ukraine crisis erupted, it is impacting the world even today. But India is by and large insulated. When we renegotiated with Russia and brought about a new paradigm in the oil economy, much to the benefit of the Indian citizen.
Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi!
One of the things that stands out with the manner in which PM Modi has engaged with world leaders is not just the regular diplomacy, but this personal connect. For example, he took the late Shinzo Abe to Varanasi to do the Ganga Aarti, for example. You had President Obama doing a Man Ki Baat with Prime Minister Modi.
I think by and large, Mr. Modi has represented India well, both in international forums, and has managed to keep India's image as an important player on the global scene intact.
India is a country seen by many as an objective friend, and I think it's got the opportunity now to lead the global south in a way that's never been true before. The real challenge today is how you make sense of this shifting geopolitics, and in that, I think the position of India is absolutely critical.
See, what's happening is that, India has really created a mark in the diplomatic arena, in the global affairs. Back home, it's been matched by as much enthusiasm in the last 9 years. What has happened is that there's been massive reforms in GST, what we call indirect tax reforms.
We are in the process of making history with the launch of the goods and services tax.
And matching with this is the other banking reform, where we cleaned banks of much of their, what we call stressed assets, the NPAs. So these two reforms really have shaped up the larger economic durability of this particular country at a time when the world is really facing a lot of challenges, inflationary, recession, lack of consumption, and also monetary challenges.
major thing I would say is to put in place a large number of framework structural reforms. So these are the frameworks that allow the economy to sort of function at a higher level of performance on the supply side.
From 2014 to 2022, the journey has been significantly transformational. And if you take a report card and compare 14 with 2022, you'll see that we were importing 82% with zero exports, and now we are importing 100% assembled in India, and we are exporting almost 12 to 14 billion dollars of Apple phones and Samsung phones and other phones out of India. So that has given us a tremendous confidence at a time. The global supply chains post-COVID, you know this, are changing decisively, are being redrawn. And for the first time in the history of independent India, India finds itself as an alternative, as a significant growing presence in this electronics value chain.
The economic model of this government is clear. It is based on two things. One is, on one side, creating the platforms, the infrastructure, the policies that allow for innovation, risk-taking and growth. So that is the driving force. At the same time, we appreciate that there is a segment of our society that will not benefit from all this growth unless given a helping hand. There are occasions where people slip. They may not be in the poorest section, but they can slip. So you need to create some sort of a safety net. So basically, let's make sure they have electricity, let's make sure they have cooking gas, let's make sure they at least have toilet, they have tap water. That creates the environment in which these men and women have a fair chance to participate in the wider world.
The entire infrastructure of welfareism, through fine-tuning and expanding the reach of direct benefit transfers, especially during COVID times and after, has been an achievement, and it is something that, given the level of poverty in this country, has benefited the poor.
Now, how has this transformation come about? People keep asking, what are the key tenets? There are two connected tenets. One is the physical infrastructure, the other is the digital infrastructure. We briefly talked about the digital infrastructure, which in itself is a massive change that has occurred in the Indian ecosystem. The physical infrastructure is being talked about globally. The pace and the fervence with which India has built its highways, roads, and the entire infrastructure is leading to a multiplier effect in the economy. And when it comes to the digital infrastructure, we all know about the Jam Trinity, we also know about the UPI story, we know about the entire formalization of the economy, which, rightly or wrongly also happened because of, demonetization. Yes, agriculture by and large has done well. This particular government has been blessed with a happy monsoon all these years by and large, but it would have been a great opportunity if this particular government had actually brought about the farm reforms which it unleashed. We hope that, whichever government comes next, they would undertake the critical role of bringing about farm reforms.
Under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi ji, he has given highest priority for development of infrastructure in the country. We are making roads of 3 lakh crore in Northeast and Assam. So we are developing every region of India. And I feel that this infrastructure is to be very useful for accelerating socio-economic transformation of that area.
The spectre of development, especially the physical development, which I meant, when we talked about the road infrastructure, this was not limited to what we call the elitist club. It really spread out to Northeast, and that brought about a new currency of hope and growth in that region. But that region has some inherent problems, which got reimagined, remanifested, unfortunately, in the violence that we have seen in Manipur. So, we need to be extremely conscious and cognizant of the northeastern region, while as development in terms of the economic development and the physical infrastructure development is obviously a welcome, but when it comes to bringing about the larger issue of peace and tranquility between various identities in that region, that needs an addressal, for durability.
The thing is that they have pursued a policy where they have said, I will not tolerate terrorism. I will tolerate dissent because that is part of democracy. I can tolerate different opinions and political views, But there is a red line which I draw, and that is with regard to anyone who decides to pick up a gun against the state. So that signal went through from day one to today. Again, 4 or 5 years, or rather from 19 to now, 4 years after 370 has been abolished. The transformation in the situation in the Jammu and Kashmir, both in the valley and in Jammu, is extraordinary.
Every country needs to be self-reliant not only in the defense sector, but for comprehensive national security you need to be reliant in many sectors. See, today you have two identified adversaries as China and Pakistan. What is the future? Nobody knows. Do countries plan only for the immediate future? No. We need to look at any possible adversary in any domain, whether identified or a potential adversary who may spring up because the situation changes. Then we should be capable enough of protecting our sovereignty and our own interests.
We have just concluded the G20 meeting in Srinagar, which has made a global statement in terms of where we are on Srinagar and how we have been able to fashion Kashmir as a growth identity for us. But going back to the Article 370 abrogation, you remember that soon after the COVID virus happened, and that really had the potential to unsettle many developed countries, and we are a developing country. So circumventing that opposition and staying the course and building a domestic vaccine, but it did show courage, and today rightly India is being seen as not only the vaccine leader in the world, it is also being positioned as the pharmacy of the world.
India realized that we will have to make our own vaccine, we cannot rely on vaccine from outside, and that helped us to start very early in making our own indigenous vaccine, and now we have more than 5 or 7 vaccines available in our country. Along with that, there has to be a whole process. Manufacturing is one thing. How do you distribute these vaccines to the entire country, and we have a huge country with different terrains. Along with that, syringes, needles, maintaining the cold chain, storage facilities, then seeing that supply chain is maintained so that if there is shortage of or increased demand in one area, more vaccines are rushed to that area as compared to some other area.
India has traversed the journey of growth all these years, and since 2009 till now, which is, we have recovered, we have so to say uplifted 41 crore people from the lines of poverty. So that's a significant achievement. We will also have to look at reimagining the social welfare template that Mr. Modi brought about. And earlier, there are two sets of templates. One is entitlement, one is empowerment. Mr. Modi, under his government, there is a view that it's empowerment, whereas under the UPA it was entitlement. So I think there is need to look at the merits of both as we go forward, because we'll have to bring about a paradigm change and be at it for the next 5 years to make India truly the $5 trillion economy.
The world is an uncertain place, but I think we are reasonably in position that by around about 2028 or thereabouts, we will probably become the world's 3rd largest economy.
I think that for a party which had an absolute majority, the degree of economic reform leaves still much to be desired. The world is looking at India, and the degree of economic reform that could have been achieved by a government with an absolute majority, I think, remains an unfinished agenda.
I think the ambitions for India are to be a very significant player, up to 7 to 10% of share on the global supply chains of electronics by 26, and we are on our way to get there. We are today $12–14 billion of exports in the current year. We are at $75–80 billion of manufacturing, and by 2026 we expect to be $120 billion of exports. So 10x almost exports between now and 26–27. And almost 4 times more in terms of sales.
I feel that the politics of 21st century is the politics of progress and development. So that's the reason that now India has a reputation in the world now. So the way in which our economy is developing, we are the fastest growing economy in the world. And the credit goes to the leadership of Modi ji and our government. And for that reason, I feel that the people will support us with our work. At 100%, we are going to win the election. And again, we will get the power. And we will make India Atmanirbhar Bharat, super economic power, and #1 economy in the world. That is to be dream of all of us.